I work with a number of small and medium-sized businesses, both for-profit and non-profit. And the common theme I keep hearing over and over is, Frank, how do I create economic change amid all this constant change? And they tell me, change is coming at us so fast that I don't have the time to understand what it is, create a strategy, and then take action. By the time I get to the action stage, the rules have changed again. As I talk to them, I have to smile, and I said, look, I've been where you are. I was a small and medium-sized corporation CEO for over 20 years. And I firmly believe that the most difficult job in the world is to be a successful small business owner. And the reason is very simple. The rules keep changing. If you look at from the regulatory side, this year there's a new tax, there's a new payroll deduction. In California now we have to have paid sick leave. You have to address all these things. Then the city comes in and says, oh, that sign that you've been using for the last 10 years, well, you can't use that sign anymore because we've changed our zoning requirements, and you have to get a new sign. So once you go through all those, navigate all those regulatory issues, then you look and you see technology has changed, and what you do is going to be rendered obsolete in the next few years. Or a major competitor moves in around the corner. Or worse yet, Amazon decides they're going to come into your marketplace. Do you remember when Amazon just sold books? Remember way back when? Now Amazon's ruling the world. So, how do you create an economic impact amid all of this change? So we need help. So what do? We're small business owners, executives. We went out and we found someone who said he was a coach or she was a coach. At least they claimed they were. Or if you were a franchise operation, the franchisor provided you with someone they called a business advisor. Okay, now what did these people tell us when they came to see us? Let me tell you what they told me. Looked at me straight in the eye and he said, Frank, you got to work harder. And I sat back and said, really? Really? You come here and you tell me to work harder. Small business owners are working 80 hours a week already. We're missing family dinners. We're having a hard time getting to our children's events. And your advice to me is work harder. Okay, when I heard that, I wanted to reach over and slap the guy upside his head. The secret, there is no secret. How are you going to sustain yourself amid all this change? It's not working harder, and it's not working smarter. It's using your imagination. It's thinking different, and it's saying, what if? And having the courage to take action on that what if. So my question to you today, that I want to explore today, is this. Is imagination more important than intelligence? Now, the first time I heard this statement, I sat back and said, is this a chicken and an egg kind of conversation here? We're going to argue for hours and no one's going to win. There is no right answer. So I looked into it a little bit. And what I discovered was Albert Einstein was credited with saying imagination is more important than intelligence. Now, given that Mr. Einstein is probably the most intelligent human that's ever walked the planet, I thought we should give this some merit and look into it a little bit more. So I looked to see if there were other similar type statements. And I found a couple that I want to share with you. One was by Jim Valvano, the late Jim Valvano. He was a head coach at North Carolina State basketball, and they had the biggest upset in the history of college basketball. He also created the V Foundation for Cancer Research from his deathbed at Duke University Hospital. Well, Jim Valvano said, if you can first dream it, you can achieve it. And then, of course, one we all know, Dr. King, I have a dream. Now, these are three pretty successful individuals who used their imagination, created an image, and said, what if? Okay, why is imagination important? Okay, imagination creates your vision. Vision paints a picture that people can see and follow. Vision leads to action. Okay, let's take a look at that. Dr. King's march in Washington, D.C. A lot of action there. Jim Valvano creating the V Foundation from his deathbed. The Women's March on Washington after the last election. And then to the marches that's coming again this January. Landing on the moon. That was President Kennedy's vision and dream. Cesar Chavez created the United Farm Workers because he had a vision and he painted a picture and he made people believe and take action. So what do imagination and vision have in common? Okay, it's an interesting concept because there's no race, there is no gender, there's no ethnicity, there's no religion, there's no lifestyle, and it's certainly not in the domain of the political parties we have today. What image and imagination have in common is that they're available to everyone. It's not limited to leaders. It's not limited to the rich or the famous. It's not limited to a job title. Image and imagination and vision can come from anywhere in your organization. It can come when you're having coffee at Starbucks. You just got to be paying attention and looking for it. Let me give you an example. I'm working with a company right now in Phoenix, Arizona. And this company does the enrollment process for a major university's online school. Okay? Now this is a call center. Call centers of today are what the old assembly lines were in the auto industry years ago. They're long, they're boring, they're repetitive, they're tedious. Okay? So the senior vice president gives me a phone call and he says, "Hey Frank, would you come on out and take a look at what we're doing? I think our process is behind. We're not meeting the standards of other companies who do online enrollment, and we're having a massive amount of turnover." And I said, "Okay, no problem. Let's sit down and talk." I told him I wanted to see 3 people. The first 3 people I wanted to meet were the department manager, were the shift supervisor, and then one of the people who works in the call center that you deem to be a pretty good employee. Okay, and I'm going to ask them all the same question. Describe the purpose of your job. Very simple. So I asked the first one, the department manager, and she says, "My job is very simple. The purpose of my job is to enroll as many students into this university." Okay, not a real inspiring statement, right? The shift supervisor, he says, "Well, the purpose of my job is the numbers game. The numbers game is the more people we talk to, the more people we get to enroll in this university." Now, did either one of those statements paint a picture for you? Did either one of those statements make you want to take action and either go to this school or work for this company? I don't think so. So I spoke to the young woman who worked on the floor. And this is a 24-year-old woman, and she's a millennial. So, right? We all have our opinions of millennials, right? So I'm going to read to you what she said because I want to get it right here. I asked her that question. She said, "I help people take the first step to realizing their hopes and dreams by guiding them through the enrollment process at one of the greatest universities in the world." Okay? Who has vision here? Who painted a picture? Obviously that young woman. So in the report I gave to the senior vice president, one of the first things I said was, find a way to put this young woman on a career track quickly so she becomes a manager, and now look for other people who have her types of skills as soon as possible. Imagination and vision involve choices. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? How are you going to get there? But the most important choice is why. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to go into this business? Why do you want to set up this nonprofit? If your why resonates with other people's why, then you will have better employees and you will have longer and more loyal customers. Okay? It comes down to this. Simon Sinek, who's a great speaker and has written a book, Start With Why, he wrote in his book, people don't care what you do, and they really don't care how you do it. There's 1,000 other companies who do what you do. They probably do it for less than you do. What they care about is why do you do it? And when your why resonates with their why, now you have a success. And the best example I can give you of this, and the one that's most impressive to me, was Dr. King's dream. 250,000 people found their way to Washington, D.C. on a hot day in August, and I believe it was 1963. And when they got there to hear Dr. King speak, what's amazing to me is there was no social media at that time. There was no website to check the time in the day. There was no 24-hour news. There was no talk radio at that time. Yet 250,000 people found a way to get there at the right time in the right place. And when they saw Dr. King, what did he say? He said, "I have a dream." He didn't say, "I have a strategy, I have a concept, I have an initiative, I have an idea I want to run past all you people." No, he said, "I have a dream." And that dream resonated with millions of people, and that dream changed the way we operate here in the United States. So, what choices have you made? Since you have a business or you're about to start a business, basically you've made a choice to create a marketable skill and to receive an education. And you haven't taken no for an answer up to this point. Okay, let me tell you a story. I'm working with one of my customers, very successful man. He told me he recently went back to his hard luck hometown for the first time in 48 years. First time in 48 years. This is a steel town that had never recovered from the steel mills leaving many, many years ago. So he goes home and he runs into 3 people from his old neighborhood, people he grew up with that he's known his whole life. And they decide they're going to go have lunch. All right, so he goes out, sitting in the restaurant overlooking Lake Erie, and he looks out and he sees the old Niagara Mohawk power plant. Okay, now this plant used to employ 2,000 people. As he looked out over the lake and he saw it, it was completely empty. Not even a car in the parking lot. And then he looked off to the right and he saw a big open field full of weeds. And that big open field used to house one of the 5 steel mills that were in this city. Employed thousands and thousands of people. As he drove to the restaurant, he went through what was once a very vibrant downtown, which is now all abandoned and boarded up buildings. So you see the picture of the environment that he left way back when. So they're having lunch. One of the friends who stayed says to the man, you know, you were lucky. You had the opportunity to get out of here. I never had that opportunity. And the man told me his first reaction was anger, but he controlled it. And he said he took a deep breath, collected his thoughts, and then he said, I made a choice to leave here. When we were growing up, we all had the same image, we all had the same vision, we all had the same dream. We were going to get out of here, we were going to go to school, we were going to be successful. But when it was time to go to college, I didn't have the money to go. I couldn't pay for that. My parents certainly couldn't pay to send me. So I made a choice. My choice was I enlisted in the military. Now, I put everything on hold for 4 years while I went and served, but I was able to save some money, and upon getting discharged, with the help of the GI Bill, I was able to finish school and start a career. Another one of the friends said, yeah, Frank, we remember when you did that, but there's no way. You enlisted during the Vietnam War. There's no way we were going to do that. We thought you were crazy. The man took another deep breath and said, well, gentlemen, I guess we all get to live with our choices. So what happened here? At one point, all these people had the same vision. They had the same dream. But only one said, what if, and made a decision and took action on that. Every time I hear people say, I didn't have the opportunity, I want to tell them, that's not an excuse, and that's not a reason. It's a choice. You chose that. So what choices do you still have to make? A term that gets batted around a lot is best practices. Are you following the established best practice? And this is a term that sometimes just drives me crazy, because best practices are a point in time. They are not gospel, they are not religion, and they are not a forever and ever thing. I hear so many people tell me, I'm following my industry's best practice, but I'm floundering. So I have to smile and say, really? Well, if it isn't working for you, then obviously it's not a best practice, is it? Maybe what we should be looking for is the next practice. What's going to make a change? History is littered with companies who follow best practice all the way to extinction. I'll give you a couple of examples. When the telephone industry was regulated, the only place you could get a phone was from Western Electric. And you couldn't buy the phone, you had to rent it forever. Now, Western Electric gave you a few choices. You had a choice of color, your choice was black, and they gave you a couple choices of style. You could have it mounted on your wall, or you could have it sitting on a desk. Okay, that was it. Those were the options. When the industry deregulated, people could choose their own carrier and they could buy a phone. And they didn't want a black phone. They wanted a red phone, or a princess phone, or a Mickey Mouse phone. Now, Western Electric continued to follow the best practice for manufacturing, which is to make a small number of models to give you the maximum manufacturing efficiency. Well, they stayed with that model, and Western Electric doesn't exist. Another example, A&P. A&P was one of the first great supermarkets. And A&P's best practice at that time was every store has the exact same items in the same aisle on the same shelf. Efficiency. What A&P didn't take into consideration was the demographics at where their stores were, and they didn't take into consideration the changing tastes of the consumers. Their feeling was, we know what's best, you just go and get what we have. A&P doesn't exist anymore. The people who survive are disruptive organizations. People who looked at and said, okay, I see what the best practice is, but what if we did this? And you know who these companies are. Google, Amazon, Apple, Netflix. You can name probably 10 other ones yourself. These people said, I don't think so. Let's try something different and see where that takes them. Now you have some choices here. You can follow the herd and probably fail, or you can say, what if, and take action and change the way things operate. Starbucks is a real good example of this. When Starbucks first started, it was up in Seattle, and it's across the street from the Pikes Market. Now the Pikes Market, for anyone who's ever been to Seattle, that's where they throw the fish, right? So across the street from where they throw the fish, there were, on one block, on one corner, there was a coffee shop named Tully's. In the middle of the block was the original Starbucks. At the end of the block was a company called Seattle's Best, another coffee shop. All three of these follow with the then established best practice, which was you serve coffee and coffee-related drinks. Okay, coffee, cappuccino, espresso, lattes, flavored coffees, etc. None of them had a blender. A blender was not part of the best practice. A blender is an unwanted expense. A blender breaks down. A blender slows down the line. A blender will increase costs. And for God's sakes, back then, no one dreamed anyone would spend $5 for a coffee-related drink. But a young woman who worked outside of Seattle in Starbucks brought her own blender to work. And she started making some blended drinks. She made frappuccinos. You ever seen a frappuccino? She made some of the other ones that we know. And basically put them on the counter where you check out and you pay. And she had samples, and people started trying the samples, and they loved them. And they came back and were asking for more. Can you make me one of those blended drinks? Starbucks, to its credit, identified this and said, wow, we might be onto something here. And they changed the best practice. In 2016, Starbucks generated $21.3 billion in revenue. $23.1 billion. Now, depending on what reports you read, 50 to 60% of that came from blended drinks. Now, that's 10 to 12 billion dollars that came from one young woman saying, what if, and changing the best practice. Okay? Worked pretty well. How many Tully's in Seattle's Best coffee shops are in your neighborhood? You see too many, and very many of them? I don't think so. Make a choice, challenge the best practice, move forward. Okay, how are you going to do this? You're going to have to collaborate because you can't fight this battle by yourself. What do most of us do? We join an industry group, or we join a group like the Chamber of Commerce, or there's a Latino Chamber in the Asian Pacific Island Chamber. Basically, we join a group that we believe is in our best interest. And they're great groups because they help us stay focused on social and political issues. But the issue, the overriding issue is we look at a situation with the same set of blinders. If we're an industry group, we have industry blinders. If we're the Latino roundtable, we're looking at with Latino blinders. You have to get outside of that comfort zone and talk to people and get input to see what could be a better practice. I'm working right now with 19 nonprofits, and they deal with youth and family, and they're struggling. Many of them nearly collapsed during the last recession. Most of them are afraid they're going to fail the next recession. And basically, they compete with each other. So there's 19 entities, and they have 19 individual infrastructure. So they have IT, they have accounting, they have fundraisers, grant writers, etc. 19 individual ones, okay? Each one has their own. And they're thinking, we're going to have to collaborate. How do we collaborate? How do we make this work? So I had them in a meeting with executives from some other industries. And after about 10 minutes, a retired IT executive said, I might have an idea here for you. Consider this. What we did in IT is we created centers of excellence. So we put up 2 or 3 locations around the country, and there's where we put all those shared services. So now we don't have to replicate it all the way across the country. It gave us increased and improved our operational efficiency, plus those people became real experts. So we were able to hire a higher caliber individual, pay them a higher salary, and we got overall benefit across the board. And these people all looked around. It was like a curtain had been lifted. So well, we never considered that, because our best practice is you do it yourself. They kept saying, well, we've always done it that way. Well, that way's not working. You're going to have to change. Collaboration develops a shared vision. When you collaborate, you get a shared vision, and shared vision creates your culture. Peter Drucker, the famous business analyst, and I may be paraphrasing him here, he said, culture eats strategy for lunch. Vision and culture gives you the direction of your company. People have to know what to do. They have to know what to expect. They have to inspire them to take action. And your culture is set very early in your company's life. Fortune magazine, May 2017, put an article out that said, for a major corporation, by the time you have your 20th employee, you have established a culture. Whether you liked it or not, you have. For small businesses, once you add your second employee who's not a family member, you've created a culture. And the culture is based on the type of people you hire, the way they act, the way they look, the way they dress, the way they talk, the way they act under stress, and that's how your company gets represented. And once a culture is established, it is very difficult to change. And a bad culture is going to lead to self-sabotage. People start losing hope, mediocrity sets in, people settle for good enough, worst case, the best people all leave. A great strategy and a poor culture is going to fail. I'm sure we all know some companies who've done that. Let me give you a couple of examples. Enron, great strategy, lousy culture. Uber, is Uber going to survive? That's a great strategy. They have a horrible culture. From the financial meltdown, Lehman Brothers, they're gone. It's Bear Stearns. Again, good strategy, bad culture. And what about the king of great strategy, bad cultures, Bernie Madoff? Culture has to be self-sustaining. It's your vision. It has to be simple. Keep it simple, clear, concise, consistent, etc. It has to be reviewed and monitored on a regular basis. It has to become ingrained in everyone, your employees, your staff, your customers. Everyone must know how to react. The key to culture is it must be sustainable and it must be repeatable. People must know what to do. Now, we've all been to dozens of conferences, and we've heard dozens of speakers, someone like me, coming up and talk about theory. And up to now, that's pretty much what we've been talking about is theory. Okay? So let's talk about a little reality now. All right, I'm going to give you 10 business practices that I suggest you take a look at, and you can take these back and you can implement them in your businesses tomorrow. You don't have to write them down. I wrote them down for you. They're in this book right here, From the Ashes, the story of the University of Washington women's volleyball program. You can buy it at Amazon if you're interested. Let me tell you what I'm talking about here. Number one, find the right leader. Okay? You want to surround yourself with people who are better than you are in their area of expertise. I learned a long time ago that if I'm the smartest guy in the room, we got a big problem. So surround yourself with the best talent possible. Number 2, clearly articulate the vision. Everybody must know what it is. They must buy into it. It has to become ingrained in everything that occurs in your organization. The third thing is to inspire others to believe. Once you've set your course, You're going to be challenged. Someone will say, well, this company over here, they do it like this. And this company over here, they do it like that. Now you can start chasing all these different models, but stay true to yourself. This is what we are. This is why we're doing what we're doing. And as you have successes, start to celebrate them. We got a new customer. We got another big win. We have something. So you reinforce the culture that you're setting up and establishing. Fourth one, clearly define the skills and the traits that you need. What is it that you need in your organization? And this is an interesting one because so many people, so many companies come to me and they say, hey, Frank, I'm going to be interviewing for position X, whatever it is. And here's the job description. What do you think? And I look at these job descriptions and they say, must know Excel, must know Microsoft Word, must know Salesforce. And I look at these people and I say, aren't those things you can teach them once you have them here? And they said, yeah, well, but it'd be better if they knew them. And I said, wouldn't it be better if you hired somebody who had integrity or determination or persistence or was willing to collaborate? So what you're looking for is characteristics, not necessarily skills. You can teach the skills. I was always taught hire character, train competency. Number 5 is select the right people and put them in the best possible position to be successful. Jim Collins wrote a book a few years back called Good to Great. And in that book, Mr. Collins stressed the point that get the right people on the bus and in the right seats and get the wrong people off the bus. Goes back to character, which we just mentioned. Number 6 is focus on details and training. You have to go over this and rehearse it and practice it over and over and over again. Everybody must know what we do, why we do it, and more importantly, why. Must be ingrained. It becomes your mantra. This is why we do what we do. Number 7 is everything's got to be documented. The system must operate without key people there. I was working with a manufacturing organization and I asked them about product returns. How do you handle that? He goes, well, John handles that. And I said, okay, well, where's John? Let's go talk to John. He goes, well, John's not here. Well, when's John coming back? I know John will be gone for a few days. I said, well, let me see what the procedure is, the policy. He goes, well, we haven't written anything down because John knows. So I looked at him and I said, what if John gets hit by a truck tomorrow? Now what do you do? Now you're going to replow the same earth over and over again. Another example, University of Washington and Arizona State University women's volleyball. At one point, a few years back, they were both ranked in the top 5. So of all the schools who play women's volleyball in the nation, they were 2 of the top 5. They both had a major All-American who was a candidate for Player of the Year. Both cases, their All-Americans were injured. Now, when Arizona State's All-American was hurt, Arizona State lost 15 of the next 16 matches. They didn't have a plan B. They didn't know what to do without her there. Everybody's looking for their all. Where is she? She's not there. I don't know what to do. They fell out of the rankings, never even made the tournament. University of Washington, they lost their All-American. They played 12 matches without her. They won 11. They had a plan. They knew what to do. They weren't 100% dependent on any one individual being the keeper of all the knowledge. They went to the Final Four. They won the national title that year. The 8th point, review all aspects and adjust as needed. This is constantly getting better, constantly improving. What did we do well? How can we make it better? More importantly, what are we not doing too well? How do we make that better? Constant improvement. Number 9, you're always raising the bar. You want to add people to your organization who are better tomorrow than the people are today. Let's go back to that Washington volleyball example. The 2005 Washington volleyball team won the national title. In 2010, 5 years later, we had a reunion for them. And we had the players come back before one of the matches. And some of the players came early and they're watching practice. And one of them said to me, you know, Frank, I'm glad I played when I did because I couldn't make this team. And I said, come on, you were a national champion. She goes, I know, but they're better. Constantly raise the bar. And number 10, don't lose sight of your goal. Once you start achieving success, you start to think, yeah, I got this. Complacency starts to set in. Complacency leads to failure. If you want help with these 10 points, call me. I'll come, we'll talk, I'll help you. Now at the beginning of this, I asked the question, is imagination more important than intelligence? And the answer is, I don't know. But I do believe this: imagination plus vision culture, plus determination is far more important than intelligence. We all know some very intelligent people who are bartenders and bus drivers. But very few determined people let things get in their way. Too many people are like the friends that had lunch out in Lake Erie that I mentioned earlier. They have imagination and vision, but they lack the determination. They lack that guy, I'm going to do this factor. I'm not going to let anything stop me factor. Let me leave you with one last statement. Where you go now is 100% up to you. Now, Pope John the 23rd made a statement that I just love. Now, Pope John 23rd, he was Pope when I was in grade school, so that was a long time ago. But he made a statement. I want to read this because he's the Pope, and I don't want to get it wrong, get struck by lightning while I'm talking to you here. Pope John 23rd said, "It often happens that I wake up at night and I begin to think about a serious issue, and I decide I have to tell the Pope about this. Then I wake up completely and I remember I am the Pope. You are the Pope. What are you going to decide? You want to talk about it, call me. I'll help you. Thank you."